This was supposed to be his second and last term in office, but Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al Sisi is poised to extend his rule until at least 2030. On the heels of parliamentary approval, Egyptian citizens will vote on constitutional changes allowing al Sisi to run for a third presidential term, likely without any real opposition. The changes are also meant to give the former general more control over the military and judiciary, which rights groups say he has used to silence his critics. The reforms are expected to pass by a wide margin.
I believe the constitutional amendments are necessary and important to complete al-Sisi's achievements, because the constitution isn't the Holy Quran. The constitution can be adjusted according to the situation in the country.
But some Egyptians see the changes as foreboding.
I strongly oppose the constitutional amendments because they consolidate the military and authoritarian rule. It's unreasonable to be different from the civilized world, where the president sits in power for 4 or 5 years and can be elected for a second term, and then another president takes over.
Al-Sisi rose to the top following a pro-democracy revolution that ousted longtime autocratic leader Hosni Mubarak in 2011. Al-Sisi led a military coup against the man elected to replace Mubarak, Mohamed Morsi, and was himself elected president in 2014. Since then, Al-Sisi has ruled Egypt with increasing severity. Human rights groups estimate he has jailed some 60,000 people on political charges and staged unfair elections to remain in power. Public criticism of al-Sisi has become nearly impossible. Nevertheless, al-Sisi remains a key ally for Western governments keen on defending their interests in the volatile region. Among those interests, fighting Islamic fundamentalism. For many Egyptian activists, however, the referendum is a blatant power grab and the end of aspirations for a peaceful and democratic transfer of power.
Joining us from Cairo is Ruth Michelson. She's a journalist in the Egyptian capital. Welcome to the program, Ruth. This referendum is expected to pass with flying colors. What are the ramifications of these constitutional changes?
Well, on the ballot today, there's a huge range of different things that Egyptians will be voting on. You mentioned the extension of presidential terms to 6 years, and in this particular instance will allow Sisi to run again after he has served 2 terms, so he will be able to run again in 2024, which means he could serve until 2030. It will also enshrine the military's role in politics. It would name them as the guardians of democracy in Egypt for the first time in an Egyptian constitution. It would also create a second house of parliament, an Egyptian Senate, and create the role of a vice president, and apparently create a 25% representation quota for women in parliament, which some people have said is simply a sweetener to get the elements concerning Sisi and the military through power.
You just mentioned the critics. The referendum is meeting resistance by some Egyptians and international human rights groups. What about the political opposition? Is there even such a thing under al-Sisi?
I mean, it's certainly fair to say that there are people who have spoken to say that they oppose this particular vote. The word most commonly associated with the official opposition here is beleaguered, showing, concerted political opposition in Egypt is incredibly difficult in an organized fashion. And certainly the Civil Democratic Movement coalition, which was set up to oppose these changes, has said that they were prevented from campaigning publicly. They were prevented from hanging banners to demand that citizens vote no to these changes. They were denied a permit to protest in front of the Egyptian parliament, and some of their members were arrested. And so it's incredibly difficult for people to publicly state that they are opposed to these changes, even though when you speak to people privately, there are certainly plenty of people that are not in favor of what's on the ballot today.
So is this being seen as a democratic vote by international observers? You make it sound like it's not.
I think there are few expectations today that this will be a free or a fair vote. I mean, when you look at the fact that Parliament only voted to trigger this referendum on Tuesday. The National Electoral Commission declared on Wednesday that it would occur today. That's not a lot of time for anyone wishing to set up an observation mission to come here to Egypt and to set up a proper observation mission, even of the kind that we saw during the last election last year. But that was still one where Sisi got 97.8% of the vote. So there are very few expectations that what we see today will be classed as free or fair by people in the country or outside.
Ruth Michelson, thank you very much.